Let's do a little bit of time travelling, shall we? Let's go back to sort of like the 1980s, early 1990s, and we're a senior management type working for a local company, and it's time to choose our new company car. Now, it's a successful-ish company, but not massively, so we're not going to be able to afford things like a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz or an Audi, but we're probably going to be looking towards the back pages of the range brochure of the local Ford, Vauxhall or Rover dealership, you know, so a Granada, you know, a Carlton, or a Rover 800 or something like that. But let's say you don't want one of those, you want something a bit more Gallic flair about it, something more Chanel from the other side of the channel, shall we suggest. So of course you've got things such as the Renault 25, the Peugeot 605 and of course the Citroën XM. Now those big French firms, they thought they could compete with the likes of the ubiquitous German 3. They thought people would, instead of buying a 5 Series, would look towards a big Citroën, a Renault or a Peugeot. Unfortunately, history has proven that that wasn't really the case. And those large executive cars now are pretty much all gone, unless it is, of course, wearing a German badge, because you can still buy a 5 Series, an E-Class or an Audi A6, you know. But, you know, obviously you can't get a Rover at all now, but, you know, you can't get a Ford Granada, you don't get a big Vauxhall, and you certainly can't get the, sort of like the big Citroën, Peugeot or Renault. But that hasn't stopped them trying. It's still trying to compete with the Germans because they are convinced that people still want something a little bit different to the ubiquitous BMW, Mercedes-Benz or Audi. Now, whilst you can no longer buy a large French executive saloon that will compete with the likes of the 5 Series, the E-Class from Mercedes and the Audi A6, that hasn't stopped the French's resilience at thinking that it can try and take on the Germans in another genre of car that seems very popular, the coupe SUV. And this is Renault's offering, the Rafale. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Renault Rafale. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, before we start on this week's road test review of the Renault Rafale, it is of course the time where I would ask you to make sure that you're subscribed to the House of Cars channel. Once you've done that, press the little bell button down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. And then of course, don't forget, once you've watched the review, if you do enjoy, and obviously I hope you do, give it a little thumbs up and leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars that we feature, such as the Renault Rafale, and of course on the House of Cars channel on the whole. So times have changed now. As we know, car genres seem to have blurred into one another, and of course the SUV took over as sort of like the default choice for a lot of people. But there are some people out there that go, well, yeah, I quite like the idea of the practicality of an SUV and maybe the higher driving position of one, but I don't like the sort of upright style. What I really want is sort of like a fastback or a coupe blended with this sort of like, you know, this sort of like the executive car interior space and the toys and the gadgets that you get. And that's what manufacturers have given us, because now these coupe SUVs, well, they seem to be everywhere, don't they? Of course, if you look at BMW, Mercedes and Audi, they've got the X4, the GLC coupe, and of course the Q5 Sportback. And that's what I'm talking about. The French manufacturers seem to have tried to emulate that by trying to blend quite a few different genres of cars together. And of course, we've got things such as, you know, the Citroën C5X, the Peugeot 408, and of course now the Rafale from Renault, because this is sort of a coupe fastback sort of flagship for the Renault range, which already has the very practical and very good Austral in it. But the thing is, by trying to combine all of those things into one car, does it really work? However, as always, before we start, let's take a brief snapshot of what the Renault Rafale is actually all about. So the Rafale sits at the top of the SUV-heavy Renault range as its flagship model. It comes in two versions, a normal petrol hybrid like this, as well as a new Alpine-tuned plug-in hybrid model. The hybrid is tested here is powered by a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder engine that's mated to 2 electric motors, one to provide electric drive and assistance to the driven wheels, the other to act as a starter generator. It has a combined power output of 200 horsepower. And prices start from just over £38,000 for the lead-in hybrid and go up to just under £50,000 for the new plug-in hybrid range topper. Now all of that seems to make the Rafale a bit of a mishmash of all sorts of different cars. So does it actually work? Well, to find out for you, I've spent the last 2 weeks and nigh on 900 miles with this one, including driving it to Scotland and back, to deliver the answer. No, there's no need to thank me. Think of me as like a Christmas gift that just keeps on giving. Now, as always, let's start with the design of the car. Is it a SUV? Is it a coupe? Is it a crossover? Yes, is the answer to that. It's all of those things. Now, the car was designed by a man called Gilles Vidal, who also designed a very, very similar car in his previous job when he was design chief at Peugeot, the new 408. So it's a very similar style of car. And I don't mean it's a direct copy, because whereas the Peugeot just seems that little bit lower, a little bit sleeker, a little bit more angular, a little bit more kind of sporting prowess, the Rafale just seems a little bit more upright. It seems a little bit more, I don't know, it just seems a little bit more squat and purposeful. It has a much more of an SUV style of stance on the road. Now, it sits on the same platform as Renault's Austral, their other SUV, the CMF CD platform, but it has a wider track, so it gives it a bit more of a presence, I think. And if you're wondering about the name Rafale, then that's referring back to the Caudron Renault Rafale aircraft that set a world speed record back in 1937. And Gilles Vidal has sort of like said there's lots of aeronautical themes in the design of the car. All right, Gilles, whatever you say, no problem at all. Let's start at the front. Renault's design. I really like Renault cars. I think they've got a really nice design going on at the moment. And they seem to be doing a really neat trick, I think, that a lot of manufacturers are starting to do. Whereas you can tell that it's a Renault from first glance, but it's not exactly a carbon copy of anything else. There are certain elements that it shares with other cars from in the Renault range, but it's its own distinct style. And I like that. You've got some nice, sort of like almost angry looking sort of like matrix LED headlights up here that are almost cowled slightly as they sort of like come into the front here. This is the bit here I'm talking about where it shares little bits, these DRLs, these signature DRLs, which you see some across lots of the Renault cars at the moment, such as the Megane and the Scenic and so forth. But it's its own, again, it's a different style on the Rafale. They're almost, it comes in and then goes down, but I do quite like that nice angular sort of like front DRL. It looks great. Now this grille section here I think is really smart. I really like this because on either side of the big Renault sort of like diamond, you've got smaller sort of like shapes which emulate the Renault diamond as they sort of like, you know, feed out from the grille. Now this isn't open, that's just a textured panel, but I really like that because again, it just gives it a bit of a distinction. The cooling's done here and then more down at the bottom here with this front splitter, obviously sort of like running across the bottom of it. But yeah, I think it's a really handsome looking car from the front. I really like it. And as you say, it's very different to the 408, which has got that more lower, sleeker, more sporty look, whereas this is much more the kind of upright, premium style of car that I think Renault were looking for. So yeah, we're off to a good start. Now the car is just over 4.7 metres long with a 2.7 metre wheelbase to maximise interior room. So it's firmly into that sort of D segment SUV style of car that we've spoken about in the opening there. I'd say it's probably not quite as low and rakish looking as the Peugeot, but it's still a handsome looking thing. You know, this has turned an awful lot of heads in the last 2 weeks that I've had it. You know, a lot of people stopping to look and see what it actually is. So it's certainly doing the trick from that point of view. It's a bit more upright, a little bit more SUV-like than the Peugeot, I think, in that respect. It's a bit taller as well. There's some nice lines sort of like, you know, coming down the sort of the panel work here just to get that break up, you know, the big doors. Talking to the doors, they open right underneath the sill as well, which is something I like, so you don't get your trousers dirty as you're getting in and out of the car, and that's on the front and rear doors, so that's excellent. 20-inch alloys are standard across the range. There's 3 models, technically 4, but I'll go on to that a little bit later on. But basically there's 3 trim levels, but they're all very well equipped and they all get the 20-inch wheels as standard. This particular one obviously has got the privacy glass at the back. You can see you've got this sort of like the contrasting black, gloss black wheel arches and lower sill sections to give it that SUV style over sort of, you know, sort of like a normal kind of car, and it all comes into this sort of like steeply raked fast back at the rear. So yeah, distinctive and handsome, not unlike myself really. Now at the rear, the first thing that strikes you is this roof spoiler at the top here, which is nicely angular, and it's actually got an opening there, so the airflow comes across the roof and then down across the rear screen. And that's one of the reasons why, of course, it doesn't have a rear wiper, because the idea is the airflow will clear the rear screen. Still like a rear wiper, sorry. And then of course it flows from the glasswork into this sort of like elongated boot lid spoiler here. Yeah, it's a nice rear end to the car, I think. You know, again, you get the nice distinctive LED tail lights, which are now synonymous with the Renault car range. The big Renault logo in the centre there, which isn't the the boot release, that's tucked underneath here. And again, depending on trim level, that'll either be electric, or in the base lead-in car, you've got to do it manually. First world issue, that. There's a little reverse camera underneath there. Maybe not the best place for it, given how dirty this rear end gets. That's the only thing I will say. Maybe that should have been mounted a little bit higher up, Renault, but there we go. And of course the plastic cladding just like continues along the bottom here. You get your E-Tech hybrid badge across there and a nice Rafale script across the back of it. So, what do we think? Well, as I say, I think it's a handsome looking car. I quite like it. A lot of it's to do with the colour. I really like this race red colour. I think it suits the car well. It picks out the lines, especially on a nice sunny day like today. You get the nice sort of like reflection of the lines, and you know, you can see all the creases and things. But it is a bit more SUV-esque rather than the Peugeot, which seems to me more of that sort of fastback style. And they seem quite popular, those Peugeots. I've seen quite a few of them in the time I've had this car. So what do you think? Because that's the important thing. Would this turn your head enough for you to go and have a look at it? Certainly when it comes just on the style alone. What do you think? Or do you prefer that more upright style of SUV like the Austral? Or, you know, maybe something more from BMW, Audi or Mercedes? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, the Rafale is a very practical car. And I know this because, as I say, I took this one to Scotland. So we went up as a family just after Christmas, took a load of gifts up for the other extended members of the family up there, and there was more than enough room. So there was 3 of us and a dog, plus the boot was absolutely full. That's 535 litres of boot space, which is absolutely ample. I know there are cars that are bigger, but I have to say it was brilliant for us. You know, you could pack it completely full and didn't have to take the parcel shelf out. I'll pop some B-roll up of it as well so you can see how much stuff we had in it. Now, it's a 40-20-40 split on the rear seat back, so when you fold that down, that goes up to 1,709 litres, so absolutely huge amount of space that you've got with it. And there's a bit more storage underneath the boot floor. Now, this car doesn't have its battery mounted in the rear, nor does it have a rear motor. That's going to come on the plug-in hybrid. It'll have a rear motor. So in this car, I'll talk about that a bit later on, but this car, you've got some underfloor storage as well, so you can get sort of, you know, muddy boots in there, or jackets, or umbrellas in and stuff like that. So it's a really practical car, I have to say. So it means you don't get a spare wheel, unfortunately, but you know, there's enough room in there for other bits and pieces. Now, for some reason, I've only got 3 suitcases at the moment. Somebody's half-inched my other one. I don't know who. Well, no, another member of the family. But look, there's the big suitcase there. There's the medium one in there. There's a carry-on in there. The other carry-on's not around, but my camera bag's in there, plus my tripod bag, and there's more space around it. The only downside, I'd say, is that is quite a high sill to lift it over. I mean, if you look, that's my sort of thigh height there, so that's the only downside. Other than that, what a really practical car. Now, rear seat accommodation is brilliant. And there's thanks in part to a couple of things here, which I'll get on to talk about. Now, that's not quite my driving position because this car's got electric seats. And when I get out, it's got that comfort access, so it slides the seat back. So that's further away. That's further back than my driving position. But even so, I've got plenty of leg room. You know, I'm 5'8". There's a little bit of under seat room for my feet. Not a huge amount, but it's okay because the battery's actually underneath the car, although it's quite a small battery in fairness. So it does push the floor up a little bit, but not a huge amount. But the back seat itself is supremely comfortable, the way they're sculpted out, the outer 2 seats. Really nice, a lot of support, you know, on your back. You know, my daughter was saying how nice it was in the back of the car. You know, in terms of the way the sculpting the seat, very comfortable for her, even to have a little sleep in the back on the way up. The other reason why it's quite big in the back of the car is because the car itself is still quite a tall car, but you've got this solar bay roof. Now, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but it's this really clever piece of glass that Renault fitted to the car, and basically what it is rather than having a blind that goes across it, you can turn it from clear to opaque at the touch of a button. It's controlled via either the screen or via a button up there, and you control it in 5 different sections. So you can have it clear at the back and opaque at the front, or vice versa, or all opaque or all clear, or do it in different sections. Really clever, but it means that you don't have to have a mechanism for a blind. So that adds to the headroom. I think it's something like 10 millimeters in the rear and something ridiculous like about 28 millimeters in the front. It gives extra headroom. So I mean, that's really good. Storage is okay too, because you've got the mat pockets on the backs of the front seats, which was great for my daughter. Really deep door bins, which is really good to see. They're really deep, and they're lined as well. I do like a lined door bin, lined with this blue kind of felt, which is really nice. There's a little bit of a transmission tunnel, but not a lot. You could certainly put a third person in there. They wouldn't be uncomfortable in there. And you get 2 USB-C ports at the back of the centre transmission tunnel for charging devices on. However, you also get this, which is absolutely brilliant. The Renault, rather sort of like self-congratulatory, call it the ingenious armrest, but it is really good. You know, as a family man, my daughter was thrilled with this. So you've got a big centre armrest, which then lifts up here to give extra storage in here, plus extra USB charging ports in there, plus these. Look at this. Your cup holders revolve round. Now you can get cups in there, but the other thing you can get in there, he says, I forgot to bring it in with me, bear with me, is your iPad. Look at that. It's got the grooves cut in it, so you can have an iPad shared between the 2 of them, or another type of tablet if you don't use Apple products, or they can just have one each in like this, or their phones, while still having their cup holders here, and you can swivel them at various different angles depending how they want to view it. I mean, as I say, it's a bit blowing your own trumpet to call it ingenious, but it is brilliant. It really is. You know, as I say, Katie was able just to have her phone sat like that, watching a YouTube thing. She was able to plug her Kindle in if she wanted to then read a book. She still had her water bottle here. And then sort of like, you know, you still had space in here for storage. It's just really thoughtful. I like the fact that Renault think about families when they're designing a car. And to me, that's a really, really clever thing. I like that a lot. Plus, as I say, you've got ample room back here. So yeah, as a family car, this really works. Right, it's another brilliant interior from Renault up here. There's a lot to like about this interior. And again, you know, I talk about a lot, you know, about using cars, you know, so like, you know, we get a press car, you get it for a couple of days, or you go on a launch, it's fine, but you never really get to experience it unless you've really properly used the car. So as taking this one on a long journey like we did was fantastic, and you start to appreciate little things about, you know, sort of like the way the interior is or the way it works or certain things. And I think this is a really good interior, I really do. So you're made up basically of 2 screens, so it's this sort of L shape, if you like, with 2 screens, 12.3-inch driver display and then a 12-inch infotainment screen here, and it's a Google-based operating system, which as far as I'm concerned is the best. I love the sort of like the Google automotive applications that they do. I think they just work really, really well, especially for somebody that's got an accent like me. The Google Assistant just seems to understand, and it just works. You know, we were driving along, we wanted to find somewhere to eat. It was going to be slightly off the motorway. You know, I just sort of like, you know, use the Hey Google app and sort of like find me app, and then it directs you there using Google Maps. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know, it's so simple, so easy to use. I really, really like it. So yeah, so that's phenomenal. I've got to commend them on that. And you've got lots of different apps here, so you can put up to 50 apps in the car, some of which will be unique to car. Sorry, the engine kicks in and out. I've got the car running, and I'll explain about that in the technical section, but that's why you're hearing the engine run. But you've got apps here, so you've got wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which work off here. And then you go into the Play Store and download different apps, you know, like Spotify, Amazon Music, Waze, that type of thing. So you can download them in here, and I think there's a couple of Renault specific ones as well you can have. So that's, you know, exceptionally good. I like the screen as well. I like the clarity of it and the colours that it uses. Now this particular one here gives you access into certain things such as the driving modes, or as Renault call it, multi-sense, which is activated by also this little button on the steering wheel here, and that will also change the ambient lighting. Oh, I should mention that on this particular car it's got the Alpine logo perforated in the seats, which is lit up. I didn't realise until we were leaving in the dark, it's actually lit up, and what it does is it pulses when you get in the car to a human heart, and then it changes depending on the colour of the ambient lighting you've got on. Now the lights that are embedded into the fabric, seemingly they're not stiff. You can't even feel them. It's the first application of it in a car, seemingly. It's incredible how they've done it. So it doesn't feel like a stiff panel on your back. You just don't even know they're there. But the way it makes the cabin feel really premium. Now that's on this particular model, and as I say, we'll talk about trims later on. But I really like that, and the ambient lighting is really nice. So if you change the multi-sense drivers, if you go into Eco, for instance, it now goes green. Everything's that sort of like, a green, and the logo's just gone green as well on the seat there. And then you go into Sport, and everything then goes red. And then there's an individual mode, or Perso as they call it, which is a more kind of purple colour. Which is nice, and then you can configure what you want in it. So that's all there. You can use the screen, or you can just scroll through it using the buttons here, which is excellent. But then you've got access to things here such as the electric drivetrain as such, so like, things like pedestrian warning sound, because you can have it done by Jean-Michel Jarre. BMW use Hans Zimmer, but of course the French, being the French, use Jean-Michel Jarre. Brilliant. And there's things like 360-degree parking camera on this model, hands-free park assist. There's different sort of settings in here for the seats, which are electric on this one, the air quality, and then of course it'll do things like monitor your driving as well, and tell you how eco you're being and that type of thing. And then you've got your driver assistant. your driver assistance things in here. Now, I want to talk about these because obviously driver assistance, aids, ADAS, advanced driver assistance systems, they're law now, and some of them are really annoying, such as lane keep assist and speed limit warning. For me, are the two that I don't like. Renault have a thing called My Perso, which is here. See this Perso, the button up here. So you program the ones you want into that, and when you get in the car, rather than having to delve through screens, you press this one little button over here by my right knee once, and then once again to confirm it, and it turns off the ones that you don't want. That to me is one of the best things in a car at the moment. I love that. It's rather than having to go through my Genesis long-termer, you've got 2 or 3 things to do before you can turn them off. With Renault, it's just 2 presses of a button and they're off. Brilliant. I love that. It's one of the best features on this car. It's superb. Now, sorry, I was just going to show you something there as well. Where was it? Dynamic chassis. This car has got 4-wheel steering. Okay, so I don't know if it's going to do it because the car's not actually driving at the moment, and therefore it's not on. Can I? If I put it into drive, will it? No, it's not doing it. Never mind. It's maybe just because it's not sort of like on. But it'll tell you there the degrees of the rear wheels are steering as well. So you can see it there, it's got the angle of the front wheels there. Why is it not doing the back ones then? Oh well, never mind. And it's got an inclinometer and things there, which I do find a bit odd as well. And you've also got hill descent control. For a 2-wheel drive car, I think that's quite, that's something to have on it. Now the 4-wheel steering I'm going to talk about when we're driving it, because there's a good and a bad thing about it. So we'll talk about that when we go and have a drive. Anyway, right, that's enough of the screen. Screen's good, works really, really well. Obviously, you see you've got Bluetooth, you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you've got all the apps you can have. But the fact that it works off Google and it has the Google Assistant, I think is absolutely superb. Love it. Right, down at the bottom, you've got the climate control system here, which also has physical buttons, okay? So as well as sort of like being able to touch, oh no, you don't actually, you just use these buttons, see? So there's your fan speed there, there's your temperature, that's maximum defrost, that's the heated rear screen and your automatic, and then your climate control over here. However, there are touch buttons here for the heated seats, which is why I thought they were as well. Heated seats are there, heated steering wheel, and this particular car's also got a heated front windscreen, which has been a bit of a godsend this morning, I have to say. So that's there as well. So superb, nice bit of physical buttons. And because you have this sort of like arm rest, which isn't the gear lever, it's just like a wrist rest, you can just hold your wrist on that while you operate the screen. Again, really simple but really clever. But it does something else. You see, I've got my cup in there. There's 2 cup holders there, and USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket. I can slide that forward to give me more, there's more storage underneath there, so you can hide things in there and then just slide that back to cover it up. Isn't that good? And that's your wireless charging pad for your mobile, so you pop your mobile on there to charge it wirelessly. I like that, really like that. Why is that not going down? There we go. The dash design itself, so you've got, as I say, the L-shape screens here, and then you've got like a little ledge here, and on this one it's got the Alcantara, which is then on the centre of the seats as well. And now the Alcantara is the first application of recycled Alcantara in a car interior, so I've read. 61% of it's made from recycled material. Renault got a big sustainability message on all their cars now. They're going to be a leather-free company from new cars launched from 2024 onwards. So from the end of last year, they say they'll be a leather-free company. So the leather that's on this car isn't leather, it's like a synthetic leather. But it feels like a really nice soft leather. It's really nice, I have to say. And it's the same in the door panels as well, and the steering wheel. The steering wheel in this bit's got a centre, so the bottom section done in Alcantara, and the rest of it's this synthetic leather, and it's just nice. It feels really nice to hold. It doesn't feel like it's synthetic. So big sustainability message from Renault, which I'm a big fan of. I will say the top of the dash here, you know, this bit up here and the top of the door, it does feel a bit hard to the touch. You know, it's not that soft touch sort of rubber. There is a bit of give over on this side, but it's very, very well screwed together. It's the materials, whilst there are maybe some slightly harder, they're not scratchy. I'm just saying that they're hard. There's no bounce back in them, but they're exceptionally well put together. The interior feels like a real quality place. You know, lower door cards and the door bins, again, like the back, the front ones, they're lined with the blue carpet that you get in this particular car, which is superb. The steering wheel is at a nice position. Obviously, it's adjustable manually for reach and for rake as well. So you've got plenty of adjustment on that. This car's got the electric seats on for driver and passenger, but that'll depend on trim level. But again, you get a really nice comfortable driving position, and once you've all adjusted it, it comes on the screen if you want to store your position. So again, it's stored into your profile if you like, which is excellent. The dashboard here, I really like this. Now, this is very similar to what I had on my Megane long-termer that I had on Auto EV. So again, you can configure it via this button here. It's quite stylish. It's, you know, there isn't a dial, there isn't a configuration where it's just 2 big dials. You don't get that. It's always a digital speed readout, which is, you know, a numerical one over there. But then depending obviously on what you see in front of you will depend what you put there. So you can have it where it's the driver assistance system, you know, link keep assist, trip meter over on the right hand side there, or you can have it where there's, you know, more of a sort of like a blacked out version of it, you know, where it's a very minimal sort of like look to it with just the speed readout, or you can put it so that the map, that's the economy meter, I must go through a few of them, hang on, there you go, so the map is up there. So you also, as well as the map there, you can have the map there and right in front of you as a driver, so I do like that. And then there's a trip meter to the side of that as well, which you can scroll up and down through. And I will talk about a few things when it comes to actually the trip that we've done with the car. You also get a head-up display as well, which is nice, very nice and clear, you know, which is nice and easy to see at a glance. The only slight downside that I've got with it, and I've always criticised Renault a little bit for that, the modern Renaults, there's a lot going on over this right hand side of the steering wheel. So you've got your transmission lever at the top here, then you've got your wipers, then you've got the media control down here. So for the stereo system, it's controlled here. So there's 3 column stalks all down the side, the right hand side of the wheel, and then just the one on the left for the lights and the indicators. Big mention to the automatic lights on these. So again, you get the auto lights, you know, as you're driving, you know, and again it will because they're matrix LEDs, it will put them on and off and vary what LEDs come on depending on what oncoming traffic is, so it doesn't dazzle them, and it still gives a really good spread of light, you know. So I really like the lights on this car. But as I say, that's one thing that it takes a lot of getting used to. It's very easy, you know, you got to flick the wiper on and you hit the media stalk or the even worse, the gears selector by mistake because you think that's what it is, but it's not. You've got to get used to all those column stocks. The wheel's nice. It's that slightly squared off steering wheel, so you can see through it into the I'll start again. It's squared off so you can see through it into the driver's display very nicely and very easily. And there's just the right amount of physical switches on the wheel itself. So you get adaptive cruise control over here on the left hand side, and then your media control, your Bluetooth and control for the trip meter over on the right hand side. There's two paddles behind the steering wheel. These are to control the brake regeneration, which again I'll talk about on the technical side. And this particular car has the Harman Kardon sound system, which is absolutely incredible. Really, really good. And then your door panels, just your usual suspects, your mirror and window controls. So, stuff that we like. Love this. That's brilliant. I've always liked this. The Google operating system, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's on Renault, whether it's on Polestar, whoever uses it, is still the best automotive one, I think. And I absolutely love it. And it's very easy to use, very, very simple. The screen's nice. It's big enough. It's simple to use. There's not too much in it. I like the graphics. I like the colours. It's very easy to read. There's a good array of physical buttons and controls here for climate and stuff, so you don't have to go into the screen too much, but if you do, the voice activation works really, really well. Good amount of storage. Sorry, I meant to say there's also a little storage bin in here as well. You can chuck things in. I like the design of it, you know, with the nice bits of material on the dash. The materials themselves feel quality and feel premium. As I say, there's a good amount of storage. I like the fact you can slide this forward and, you know, for a hidden wee cubby in there. I don't like all the column stocks down the right hand side of the steering wheel, but that's a minor point. You can just get used to it. I love the fact you can turn off the safety systems nice and easily. The seats are really comfortable over a long journey as well. They are brilliant. And as I say, in terms of the sustainability message of the car, it's fantastic. Last thing to mention, as I say, is this solar bay roof, which you can operate via this button here, so you can make it go clear or opaque from this button here. The only thing I will say, maybe, because obviously when it's opaque, it's obviously very light, you know, it's still a light covering. It might have been quite nice for them to do the headlining in a light colour, a light grey, just so it blends in a bit nicer and makes the car feel even more spacious inside. But maybe that's just me. I don't know, but that's very, very good. Oh, you also got a sunglasses holder in there as well. There you go. So yeah, there's not really an awful lot to fault with the interior of this car. Good storage, good comfort, easy to use tech, nice and simple dashboard readout, and all the right amount of equipment, and the safety stuff that you can have and you can turn on and off as you see fit, plus a really good sustainability message. Renault, another brilliant interior as far as I'm concerned. Now, there was a time you'd have thought a car this sort of size and price would at a minimum have a 2-litre engine, if not a big turbo diesel unit in it. But what we have here, in fact, is a 1.2 3-cylinder turbocharged engine that produces 130 horsepower on its own. Now, it also has the combination of 2 electric motors with it as well, one of which will help the engine drive the front wheels, and that in itself produces 70 horsepower. So a combined power output for the Rafale is 200 horsepower and 205 Newton meters of torque. The second electric motor acts as an integrated starter generator, and that'll help with things such as torque fill. You are going to be able to get the car soon as a plug-in hybrid as well, which will give 300 horsepower thanks to the addition of another motor at the rear, on the rear axle, so all-wheel drive, but that's for another day and another test perhaps. It has a 1.7 kilowatt hour battery in it, but you don't need to charge it up. The engine does that, so it's not a plug-in, this one. This is a standard hybrid, okay? And Renault reckon that, you know, if you're clever and careful, you might see up to around about 80% of your driving pure on pure EV alone. And I can kind of see that in some respects. There are times over the last 2 weeks where I've been driving it and I've looked down to realise the engine's not even running. It's driving on electric power alone, even at like certain motorway speeds. So, you know, it's not out with the realms of possibility. Fuel consumption, well, again, if we look at official figures, they're reckoning around about 60 miles to gallon. I've done 900, I think it's 904 miles I've done in the car, and I've averaged 44 miles to the gallon. But bearing in mind, a lot of that has been, in fact, the majority of that has been motorway work. So if there's a combination of motorway, A-road, and maybe town work, then maybe 50 miles to the gallon isn't out of the equation. And obviously, if you're a company car driver, you want to know about emissions, well, they're between 105 and 107 grams per kilometre, depending on the spec that you choose. So up until now, the Rafale's been quite a surprise, I would say, in some respects. You know, in terms of, you know, I quite like the way it looks, you know, in terms of the interior, in terms of space and all the rest of it. It's been absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. But the drive, it's where it starts to fall apart a little bit for me. Now, it's not power that it's lacking. You know, as I say, you think, oh, 1.2 litre 3-cylinder engine, you know, but it, you know, well, along with the electric motor, it's 200 horsepower. It, you know, 0 to 60 dips under 9 seconds. It's absolutely fine. You know, in fact, in some respects, I'd say it feels a little quicker than the raw numbers suggest. It's how it does it that I have a bit of an issue with in some respects. Now, let me explain. So you've got that 1.2 litre engine and you've got an electric motor. And you've got this weird kind of gearbox that doesn't really have, it doesn't work like a normal kind of automatic transmission in some respects. And the three of them combined, it's like, how can I put this? It's like they're not really in sync with each other in some respects. It's like a business presentation between colleagues that have just met. You know, they don't know how the flow goes. They don't know who's talking when. You know, they're saying this, oh, we'll get on to finances. Oh, Gary, isn't that your department? Oh, yeah, that's mine. It's a bit like that. So when you put your foot down, there's a slight delay in a response coming back because it's almost trying to decide, do I need the engine? Does that need to come in now? Does it? Oh, it does, right. Now I'll go. And then it kicks down and then it comes in. That's how it feels. It's not slow, it isn't. It's absolutely fine as far as the performance is concerned. It's just not as, its responses aren't quite as sharp as I'd like them to be, as I think they should be. That's where it falls apart for me. It's quite a smooth car in the sense that when you're driving along and it decides it's going to, you know, the battery's charged and it's going to run in electric power, like it's just done it now. You know, and it just goes into EV mode, that's fine. You know, I've got no issue with that. I've got no issue with how it does it. With the fact that it does it. It's how it does it that I have the problem with. It just doesn't feel quite as in sync with each other as I think it should be. That's my problem. And then we get to the ride quality, which again, I just don't think is, you know, and it's not just, we can't just lay the blame at the wheels, you know, at the big 20-inch alloys, because it's not that. It just, again, just doesn't feel, you feel everything through it. You know, the ride quality is quite firm, it's quite unsettled, it's not sure. Every bit of the surface you feel through the car. You know, you do feel it. You know, it doesn't isolate bumps, it doesn't isolate potholes, it doesn't isolate bad surfaces from you. You feel everything through it. Now, I'm led to believe that Renault did a little bit of tweaking to the car before it went on sale, because there was a few reports from the press that said this. And when the cars, before they came to the UK, they'd done some tweaking to the chassis. I think they need to do a bit more. Now, the plug-in hybrid is going to have adaptive dampers. That might change things, but as I say, that's not the car I'm reviewing. I'm reviewing this one, and as I say, its ride quality is unsettled. That's how I'm going to put it. Not uncomfortable, it's unsettled, and as I say, you just feel quite a lot through the car itself. The other issue that I have is, going on from that, is the refinement of it. There's quite a lot of noise from it. There's a lot of road noise from it, and there's some wind noise from it. Now, interestingly, you know, we went up and down the M6, you know, over this last week, going up to Scotland and that, and my wife commented on it. Liz commented, she said, sounds like we've got the roof box on. That was her view of it. She said, it sounds like there's a lot of wind going around the car, like we have a roof box on, like when we go to France with our Jeep. You know, and I maybe wouldn't go that far, but I understand what she means. You know, there was an element of it where you'd have to turn the radio up just that little bit, you know, a notch further, or you'd have to talk just a little bit louder, you know, when Katie, my daughter, was in the back to hear what she was saying. You know, it's just a little bit too noisy. It's not as refined as it should be. My last complaint in some respects is a bit of a, it's not really a complaint because there's a benefit and there's a downside with it, and it's to do with this four-wheel steering system. Now, it makes the car very manoeuvrable. You know, when you're, I mean, we were in a couple of multi-storey car parks with the car, and by goodness me, it really was getting around some tight turns, you know, with up and down ramps. You know, it's very manoeuvrable. They say the turning circle of it, you know, is not far off a Clio's, you know, and that's for a big car that's, you know, nearly 5 meters long. That's good. So it does have a huge benefit with it. You know, the turning circle, the manoeuvrability is brilliant. The only downside then is when you're at speed, there are certain circumstances where it feels like it's almost like a crab. And the other times as well is, I did feel like there was so much input coming from the rear axle steering. It felt like the rear end was actually losing grip. It was so sudden, it just felt like the rear end was just stepping out, and it wasn't. It's just that four-wheel steering. So again, I'm sure it can be tweaked. I'm sure it can be, you know, refined a bit, Renault, but that's how it felt. It just felt like it was just losing grip at the back. It wasn't. It was just the steering. That's what it was. It just, the back end just didn't feel quite as in sync with the front, you know, as I felt that it should be. Sorry, width restriction. So yeah, I have to admit, there is a lot to like about the car. There is a lot to like about it, and I do like it. You know, I love the interior, I love the driving position. You know, it's very comfortable in the sense of the seats and the, you know, sort of like the where you're positioned in the car. There's good visibility around the car. You know, it's very safe. There's a lot of driver assistance systems fitted to it. All of that, you know, there's a lot to recommend. And as I say, the performance is fine. It's not lacking in performance, but it just doesn't, it feels a little bit disjointed. It doesn't feel quite as, you know, it's a great idea in theory, all of this. I'm just not quite sure it works in practice. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, like, you know, the hybrid system, the, you know, with the small engine, the four-wheel steering, the, you know, sort of like, you know, the ride quality is not quite there. It just all doesn't quite gel up with one another. It feels a bit disjointed. That's how I feel about it. The paddles behind the steering wheel alter the brake regeneration. And that's the one thing I would say, you know, maybe it might have been it might have helped the car a little bit, you know, in terms of the response from the drivetrain, if that had been to do with the gearbox. You know, you're able to manually select a gear rather than letting the car decide what it's going to do. If you'd been able to manually override it, it might have resolved some of that issue, but you can't. These are to do with the brake regen. Flicking the car, as I say, you know, sorry, flicking the mode button, you know, from comfort, where I've spent most of my time, into sport, you know, it does help a bit, but it doesn't make it more responsive. It makes it feel a bit quicker. It just doesn't respond any faster. So that doesn't really help it either, you know? And as I say, it's not lacking in performance. I don't think it's a slow car. I'd just like it to be a more responsive one. The last thing I want to talk about is actually the brakes. And again, they're a bit the same. You know, there's a reasonable feel to the pedal, but you go through a tiny bit of deadness first. And again, then it decides it's going to bite. So, yeah, it's so nearly like a really, really good car, but it's a fundamental part of it that lets it down, and that's the drive of it. It just doesn't quite gel. It doesn't quite work. It's good, but it should be better. Now, for the sake of the pricing section, and for the sake of really the whole review, we're not going to talk about the plug-in hybrid model, okay? That's, as I say, for another day and perhaps another review. So we're just concentrating on the standard Rafale hybrid, okay? Nice and simple range. Renault do like the range to be nice and simple, which is both a good and a bad thing, which I'll explain about in a second. But basically, so in other words, there's no options on the car, and just paint finish is your only option on it. So you've got a very nice and simple trim level walkthrough, if you like. So we start at the Techno trim, and that's £38,195. Okay. Next up is the Techno Esprit Alpine, which adds the 4-control 4-wheel steering, head-up display and a few other little niceties, and that comes in at £42,195. Okay, then you've got this car, which is the top of the range one. This is the iconic Esprit Alpine, and that adds things such as the 360-degree parking camera, the solar bay sunroof, Harman Kardon audio system, and this is going to cost you £44,695. Okay, now, whilst, as I say, that's quite good from a point of view of a nice and simple range walkthrough, the only downside with that is, let's say you think to yourself, well actually that Techno car at 38 grand is all I really want, but I quite like the solar bay roof, I quite like a sunroof on a car. You can't add that as an option. You've got to then jump up to this top of the range car. So, you know, you've got to go up, what's that, you know, another £6,000 just to get the sunroof, which is, you know, maybe the downside with that, in fairness. You can't just add an extra grand onto it and spec a sunroof. So, you know, good and bad points. However, in fairness, it's still a lot cheaper than, say, like a BMW X4, considering the level of standard equipment on this. I mean, my iX2 long-termer that I had through Auto EV, you know, didn't have things such as electric seats and such like that. That was over 60 odd grand. You know, so in fairness, it does offer, I think, reasonable value for money, considering the style of car that it is, even in this top of the range, guys. Now, when it comes to rivals for the Rafale, well, the natural one I look at is, of course, the Peugeot, the 408, because again, it's that sort of strange kind of concoction of cars, whether it's a coupe, whether it's a crossover, whether it's an SUV, whether it's a fastback, whatever you want to decide that it is, that's a car that I think is a natural rival for this one. And Citroën do have one as well in some respects with the C5X. Again, a bit of a weird sort of combination of different styles of cars in one. But, of course, as I said right at the very beginning, it's the French taking on the Germans at their own game. And if we are to look at Germany, that's where I think we see the three main rivals for this car, which is the BMW X4, the Audi Q5 Sportback, and of course the Mercedes-Benz GLC Coupe. So that's your pick of cars if you're looking for a direct rival for the Rafale. There's a lot to like about the Rafale. It's quite stylish, it's well built, it's well equipped, and therefore I think it offers reasonable value for money considering the market that it's in. But it's not without its flaws. I think it's quite lazy in its response to its driver's input. It's not quite as dynamic as I feel that I'd like it to be, and it's certainly not as refined as I feel that it should be, certainly not for a car that's claiming to be Renault's flagship. Now, some of those might be addressed by the new 300 horsepower plug-in hybrid model that's coming along, but I won't be able to answer that until I've driven it. But what I will say is this: do I like it? Yes. Would I recommend it? Well, I'd recommend that you at least go and have a look at it, if nothing else. It's not a bad car. It's just that others do it a little bit better. And it does make me think that it's a little bit of another one of those executive French cars that we saw from years back. And that is, don't confuse being different with necessarily being better. Thank you for watching another road test review on House of Cars. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel. And once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button that's down below, because that way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, and obviously I hope you have, then make sure you give it a little thumbs up. And don't forget, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you choose this over a BMW X4 or a Mercedes GLC or Audi Q5? Have you? Have you ordered one? Have you bought one of these instead of one of the German cars? What made you buy it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, remember, I'm on social media as far as Instagram is concerned, so it's at House of Cars 1973. So if you're a fan of the gram, you'll find me there, and it certainly helps the channel if you follow me, so please do that. And remember, whether or not it's a new car or it's an old car, whether it's a large car or a small car, whether it's a slow car or it's a fast car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thanks for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. I'll see you again soon.